Goats doing goat shit. This is the segment of the Spun Today podcast, your favorite and mine, where I like to highlight goats within their respective areas that go above and beyond and do something dope, do something honorable, that I like to credit here in the Goats Doing Goat Shit segment. Things that they don't have to do, but decide to. This episode's inductee and the final inductee of 2024 to the Goats Doing Goat Shit list, none other than Mr. Beast, aka Jimmy Donaldson. For those that don't know, Mr. Beast is the largest YouTuber on the planet. He also has this, he's gone viral, tons and tons and tons of times. Again, biggest YouTuber in the world. And he does things, create his own games, which he actually has a dope one on Prime Video as of late that I just saw a couple episodes of. I think they're streaming one episode every week or every few days or something like that. And it's broken a bunch of Guinness World Records for most contestants on a game show. He had 1,000. Most cameras on a game show, over 1,000. He built a city to host these games, literally built from the ground up, and just a ton of records and stuff like that. But that's a huge skill thing that he's doing. But he's done things. He gives away like $250,000 all the time, $1 million, holds a sign on the side of the road that says house for sale $1, and people that actually stop, actually sold them the house for $1 after buying it. It does a bunch of games. There's a huge circle in the middle of a field, and 50 people will be in it. The last one to leave the circle gets $1 million. Like weird, crazy, interesting videos like that just grab your attention. But he has this philanthropic arm that I've highlighted in the past, definitely on my newsletter in the video of the week section, which folks can subscribe to absolutely for free at spuntoday.com/subscribe, where he's done things like built 100 water wells in Africa, paid for LASIK surgery for like 1,000 people that otherwise were blind. And I'm sorry, not LASIK surgery, cataract surgery, that people that were blind, they just couldn't afford the surgery for it. He gave them their sight back, and just really cool, dope things like that. But the reason why I'm adding him to the Goats Doing Goat Shit segment today is because of the play against, for lack of a better choice of word, against big chocolate, quote unquote. So he has this company called Feastables, which makes chocolate bars, which are actually pretty good. And the whole idea is that, candy bars don't have to be, chock full of bullshit and chemicals and stuff like that. You can make them with just a minimal number of ingredients. Because I believe you just have chocolate and sugar and like sea salt, and then whatever else, if it has peanut butter or peanuts or almonds or whatever. It doesn't have yellow number 5 and xanthan gum and this and that and the other, and a list of a shitload of ingredients. But it's a small company, right, that he has been scaling. It's called Feastables. And he was getting the cocoa for his chocolate from a sustainable, ethical source, sustainable farms, family-owned farms in Peru. But he said that 70% of the world's cocoa comes from West Africa. That's where all the big players get their chocolate, because they're such huge companies. They need tons and tons and just a very large supply of chocolate. His beef with that is that 46% of the labor of that source of cocoa in the world, so 70% of all the cocoa in the world comes from West Africa, from two countries, Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. And of that 70% source of chocolate, 46% of them, so almost half of them, all employ child labor. And he said that he knew he would have to move the operations for Feastables, his supply chain rather, for Feastables over to West Africa, because it would outgrow what Peru is able to supply. And that, the sustainable chocolate source that he was getting from Peru, he can't really say to the big chocolate players, you should source your chocolate sustainably and not employ child labor, because look, we can do it. He said that wouldn't be a good argument, because from their perspective, they'll just say, oh, you don't know how it works, you're too small, that's good for you, but not sustainable for us. We can't do that at this level. Now, what he's found is that a big reason that there is child labor is because the farms don't make enough money to be able to afford to hire adults. But there's this thing called the living income reference price scale, where it breaks down that if a farmer sells you a metric ton of beans, if they don't get paid X, then they won't be able to make a living wage, which essentially forces them to turn to child labor in order to survive. Now, what Feastables is doing is using that metric and guaranteeing farmers that price, contingent on no child labor. So he said, theoretically, if they sell it to him for less, Feastables will pay them a premium on top of what they sell it to them for, and say, no, this is what you need to actually live, etc. And, you know, break it all down for them. They also have farm coaches that are helping them get more yield out of their farm. So he says 5 to 10% more yield of hectares, more yield out of the hectares that they have, and getting them supplies, etc., and teaching them how to make more out of what they have. And, you know, he went out there himself, spent a week on working the farms, figuring out how to do the ethical sourcing thing the right way. And his long-term goal, which is why, again, I'm adding him to the Goats Doing Goat Shit segment, is that he hopes to prove the concept once Feastables does scale up to the levels of Big Chocolate, that Big Chocolate can also be ethically sourced, aka no child labor, and profitable. It doesn't have to be either or. And then he can use that proof of concept as well as his, you know, huge platform to essentially bully Big Chocolate into following suit. And he said, you know, there are currently over 1 million kids in child labor in cocoa farms in that area. And obviously he can't get all 1 million of the kids out, but he says if he can put a dent into a couple thousand, and then with his influence get one or some of those big chocolate companies to follow suit or do the same, it can lead to tens of thousands of kids or 100,000s of kids not having to be working in cocoa farms in West Africa. And for that, I'm officially inducting Mr. Beast, aka Jimmy Donaldson, into the Spun Today Goats Doing Goat Shit list. Good on you, sir, and welcome to the club.